Yamatji and Gumbaynggir woman Emma Donovan is a powerful artist and one of the biggest and most loved voices in Australia. Passed down through generations of Donovans and literally pushed to the front of the stage by her uncles in their legendary family band, the Donovans, Emma's musicality and talent was recognised at a young age. I am thrilled and honoured to be sitting here with her to find out more about her story. Emma Donovan, welcome to the Australian Music Vault.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What an honour, and thank you so much for having us.
In an interview, I remember you said that you always remember your first. And so I would like to dive deep into your story with this idea of the first memories of things that you've done throughout your career. And I guess what I would love to start with is if you could tell me a little bit about Stand By Your Man and the man that stood by you while you performed that as your first memory of a performance.
Oh, I'm going to get all teary now thinking about that because, I was about 6 years old and I've got a 6-year-old now and she does sing, and I think about myself standing behind her. But yeah, growing up, I had my beautiful Poppy, my Pop Miko. I had my mother, Agnes Donovan, and I had 5 of her brothers, mostly Uncle Michael Donovan, Uncle Merv, or Uncle Shine, we call him, and Uncle Ash. And I guess, Stand By Your Man was a song I did at my uncle's wedding. And, my pop was there with the guitar, and Mum was holding me. And I guess my biggest memories are all the country music that I learnt at that age.
Yeah.
For such a young age.
And was that was facilitated by the two kind of big personalities in your music journey? As you said, your Pop Miko and Nana Eileen.
Yeah, Nana and Pop, a lot of people knew them in the community. They were the ones that kind of started everything, with the family. When I was growing up and I was even getting gigs, everyone would be like, "Oh, you're Miko and Aileen's, granddaughter.
Yeah.
Who's your mother?" That's how they, ask like who I was. And my thing was always, "Oh yeah, it's not my uncle's, it's not my dad's. My mother's Agnes." And that was the conversation of, when I'd get gigs and was asked in the community the first time. But yeah, my grandmother and my grandfather, they, sung lots of country music. My grandfather wrote lots of country music. And some of my earliest memories, even before the Stand By Your Man, songs at the weddings, was just sitting on Nan's bed and having all the uncles around. Everyone would play, kitchen or mainly Nan's bed, and just learning to kind of jump in on a harmony.
Yeah. What were the kinds of music? Did a different relative have a different style that they were trying to push onto you as the better style of music?
Nah, like it was always up to Nan and Mum to go, she got to learn this song here. We'd go to Tamworth every year.
Yeah.
So that's when it started getting kind of, when we were kind of, if we were rehearsing for anything, it'd be like we were, working out new songs to sing at Tamworth. But other than that, there was always just like, regular family kind of gatherings of singing.
Yeah. I know that there is a story of yours of a very popular cassette that was shared or stolen between the two sets of grandparents because your Nan and Pop, your Nan's sister, was it? And your Pop's brother were also married, and there was a shared kind of love of music. Could you tell me a little bit about that CD and who was on it as well?
Yeah, the cassette.
Yeah. Cassette.
No, you're right. So, you got that right. There was these 2 Nana's houses. So we had my Nana, my mother's mother, and then her sister moved down to Western Sydney. We call her Nana Yvonne. She had this house out at Western Sydney called The Ranch. Yeah. And it's like we're two houses where everybody would like travel from. And this one cassette was like gold, and it was a Roger Knox cassette. And, it'd spend the weekend or the week down at Honey Evans, and someone would drive or take it back. But that was like gold. And, my biggest respect always to Uncle Roger. I heard his beautiful versions of Bridge Over Troubled Water, Koori Rose, and these were songs that I would always sing with the uncles, and I would just, hear that magic voice.
Yeah, absolutely. He's called the Koori King of Country, or the Black Elvis, which I think is apt. Something that I feel as a listener that you and Uncle Roger Knox have in common is having this gravitas and such a big voice. Was that something that people recognised in your singing early on?
I think, like, when I was a kid, I just spoke loud because I came from, like, my grandmother. She was loud. And, when my uncles weren't playing music, they were playing football. And we got this yarn, like, you'd go to the end of Wall Street where, Nan's house was. There'd be a footy oval across from it. You'd hear my Nan's voice, you'd hear her. And she was louder than all the rest. And all her, her brother was loud. I think, maybe I was loud. And even today, like, I always, when I'm organising the kids, I get pretty loud, and I think I have to stop myself and think, I'd have to stop myself from being loud. This is how I was brought up, and Nan's voice was huge. Vocally, it was really big.
I'd love to go back to Tamworth, somewhere that you brought up. Did you have the opportunity to see Uncle Roger Knox play at Tamworth? Because it is so fundamental to your early stages of music playing, and like you said, the Donovans rehearsing for this event. What was like a typical getting prepared for Tamworth and going to Tamworth like for you growing up?
It was beautiful. Like, I'd see Uncle Roger Knox, I'd see Uncle Cole Hardy perform up there as well. And alongside my family. A lot of the times my uncles were playing for them. So that was always our time to, we're going to go see Uncle Roger play. And I felt like there was a lot of Koori families that came together. My mum and my uncle had a lot to do with, trying to put on events in Tamworth that would showcase Aboriginal, artists and talent. And they'd even do talent quests up there. And so there'd be like days of, they'd get funding and they'd, put on these special events, and they'd do them out on the other side of town too. They'd do them closer to the community. And Tamworth was that, time of seeing a lot of different Aboriginal families. The Williams mob, Uncle Warren Williams, all Arrernte mob from Central Desert. And we became like family, we became close. Country music was bringing us, together.
Yeah. There were as well, like, it was not just the Donovans family that was there. The Knox family was also there.
The Knox family, the Donovan family, the Williams family. To this day, like, when we see all that mob, there was a band, that you would come across from Western Australia, the Backyard Rascals from up Kimberley Way. And, just look forward. It was like a big reunion every year. And as the years went on, more kids would come, and grandkids, and Pop Gus Williams, who's Warren Williams' father, he would bring more of his grandchildren, and we'd just, I did a gig in Alice a couple of weeks ago, and I seen all that mob again, and it was just like straight away took me back to Tamworth. Great grandkids now, just telling stories, and remembering all the times that we'd come together and we'd help each other sing songs. Like, I wouldn't just have my uncles on guitar. I'd have Uncle Warren's brothers on guitar too, so we mixed it up. Yeah. And it was always a really special time. Yeah.
I want to know, what is your first memory of your first outfit that you had to wear at these talent quests?
Growing up, Mum got a bit excited, I always say to everyone, she wanted me to be a little black Tammy Wynette, She wanted me black Tammy. And she'd doll me up, and her and a couple of the other aunties, for weeks before we'd go up to Tamworth, I'd be trying on all these little flash outfits, and they'd be silk, and, they'd have all the country patterns with the tassels, and I'd have the boots and the hat to go with it. And then my other little cousins would be dressed up too. And this was Mum's way of like entering me into a talent quest. You used to get the judge sheets in the talent quest, and it'd be all, you know, marked, you know, from 100 points, you know, like 20 points to your, you know, your outfit or what you wear, and your song choice, audience participation. There'd be all these things. And Mum would drill me. She'd be like, you know, she'd have like a little schedule organised for me for Tamworth.
Yeah.
So we'd do a lot of busking when we first went up. And that was a big competition, you know, in Tamworth, just the buskers comp. So we started off doing that. Then Mum, you know, was, you know, getting some more info out of Tamworth, and she's like, there's a lot of talent quests up here. Emma's going to enter us in there. Anyway, so because there was all of our family, there was like me, my cousins, you know, all my uncles, there would be all these like different sections. So there'd be like female country music, male country, group country, duo country, gospel country, rock country. And so like all of us Donovan, there'd be like, you know, 10 or 15 Donovans in one section, like a few sections. So yeah, this was Mum's plan.
Yeah.
She's like, we'd go up and we'd do it every year. And then, you know, as the years went on and we'd meet more Koori Aboriginal families, we got everyone involved.
Yeah.
And then later on, Mum decided to do some of these talent quests because they were the ones that were a part of the whole festival. Mum took it upon, you know, her and the uncles to start doing the Aboriginal talent quest, you know, closer to the community. And they were just, good times.
What is it that that draws you in with country music as someone who's grown up listening to it and also had it kind of imbued in them from family members? What is it about country music? Because a lot of Indigenous performers find their way into music through country music. It seems to be the genre of music that really sticks.
I've been thinking about this lots, especially with collaborating lately with, you know, a soul band like the Putbacks. I see a lot of old country songs that, you know, have this beautiful soul versions as well, and they're, you know, from around the same era. I think a lot of it is storytelling and the way, like, blackfellas, you know, tell our stories and the way that we're connected to, you know, different stories. But I think the one thing that stands out to me with connection with country music and blackfellas is, you know, the feel of them songs, that connection to country, and, you know, not ashamed to just tell that story. You know, there's a lot of hard stories that blackfellas have told over the years, sad stories. And I think country music is that outlet to, you know, not feel shame on... there's also that gospel thing too, you know, where a lot of our mob of, you know, come from, you know, mission life and you know, being made to, you know, to sing in the churches. And I think a lot of that is a reflection on our mob and community, like how we want to, you know, tell our story and in that genre, put it out there.
Yeah. So you go from this foundation of growing up in a very musical family, and then you move to Sydney and go to college there, and this is the first time you kind of start finding your own voice as like writing songs for yourself. What was that experience like?
I had two other beautiful Aboriginal women that I connected with at the Eora College, and that was Nadi Simpson and Kalina Briggs, and we just became really good friends. And it was the first time I felt like I had that permission to kind of, you know, just go and try other styles of songs, or, you know, not just lean towards the country music thing, which is the family thing. So, yeah, no, I really loved it. You know, I remember, you know, doing a few jazz and blues songs, and they were all assignments for, you know, the class, and we were just, feeling our own way, and just, I opened up then, and, I didn't even, it wasn't really planned to kind of write. To be honest, I played a bit of drums.
Yeah, rad.
I tell that to Rory now, the drummer of the Putbacks. He's like, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just hanging around, enrolled in the course, and I thought, if I was to do anything for my future, it was gonna be musical. Yeah.
What were the kind of the themes around the songs that we were writing at that time
Oh
for
yeah,
you?
it was definitely like our friendship and a way to express, as young women. And we had a beautiful friendship. So we just, that was mostly our songs. Our songs were about, our lives and our families. And just, we were kind of growing, together. And that was like my first, like my baby steps, I guess, into, just having a go at writing. I guess the overall thing was just not feeling shame about just wanting to write
Yeah.
about what we wanted.
Did you feel the response from when you started playing those songs? Was it empowering to realise that it connected with so many people? The story, like your story, was felt by so many others?
Yeah, and I think coming from young Aboriginal women too, we had this name, stiff gins, and gins is a derogatory term for women. So we used that name, to, help break down some of them, barriers and opinions that people had on black women, So we were trying, being pretty tough, I think, at that age.
Yeah.
And, being gutsy. And we were inspired by people like Annie Ruby Hunter and Titters, we had them bands to look up to. And we were just, we just wanted to write and, take that power back and reclaim, a lot of what our grandmothers and our aunties had been through, being called a gin. So that was important to us, I think,
Yeah.
as a collective when I first started. And I was, I was only like 17.
It's amazing. You've brought up Auntie Ruby Hunter, and I would love to find out from you how your involvement with Black Armband began, and also that relationship that you built with Auntie and her husband, Uncle Archie Roach, as well, during that time of being in that band.
Yeah. I'm always really honoured to speak, and talk about my involvement with Auntie Rube and Uncle Arch, and respectfully, I always call them Uncle and Auntie, as, a lot of people do in this country that are, where their music has touched so many families and people. And I say that with the most respect because their music was just, it was huge, like in our household, and not just our home. We come from a country music household, but I think that was the only other genre outside the country that kind of came in and we lived, we lived it, through albums like Charcoal Lane, and my first album that I got was Thoughts Within from Annie Ruby Hunter. I'm in awe of their love story. I think I see my nan and pop. These two people that just loved each other so much and had this beautiful musical connection. I get really emotional talking about them both, and more so Annie Ruby. I think she's one of the most gutsiest, powerful black women I've ever had to learn from in my life, besides my mother.
I'm also interested in, like, with your uncles, and like you're saying, you've learnt songs and covered songs of artists that you love, and that Black Armband were a part of your music education. Was it surreal to be standing on stage and having that idea of, I grew up listening to them and now I'm standing with them on stage? What's that experience like?
It was crazy, like the first time I ever rocked up to Black Armband rehearsal. I think I was like texting my dad saying, Dad, I'm in the same room as Bart Willoughby. Like, he's here. He's standing in front of me. I think what the most amazing and most... I still can't get over the, experience I had today, but the rehearsals, well, they were amazing. Like, seeing everybody, everybody's songs and what they'd put into, the music before we'd actually do the gig.
Yeah.
That was a big eye-opener for me. And if you ever know, Uncle Arch, like the way he, 100% every time, and it was them experiences that, you know, I'll always take with me and, you know, never take for granted, I guess. You know, I see people like Uncle Archie, Uncle Jack Charles in the industry who are a lot older now.
Yeah.
They still have that amazing, you know, work, like, you know, ethic and the way that they hold themselves. You know, it's not a rehearsal, you know. It's their life, it's their songs that have led them to that point. Yeah, I'm just in awe of them and what they carry.
There's a real power in the truth that they tell, unashamedly. They go to the spaces where they've either been told not to go or that people are scared to go because of fear of shame. Did experiencing that reinforce you that your story was important and the lineage that you held was important as an artist?
Yeah, and you know, growing up, Dylan, you kind of have that argument with yourself as a songwriter. Like when I first started writing songs, I was with another 2 Aboriginal women. It was all, you know, the first time we got to tell our story, we was excited about that. After years of that, yeah, I started, you know, picking a lot of it apart and going, oh, what if, you know, someone doesn't, or, you know, how are people going to feel about this? And I'd argue with myself about, you know, some of the things I wanted to write about or put out. But then I met the Black Armband and, you know, continuing to tell my story. And then I realised, you know, there's this whole collective of, you know, Aboriginal voices, and they've been individually telling all of their stories and their songs too. And I felt a big part of that. I felt like, you know, my voice was, you know, slowly becoming heard. And it's like this thing in community that we have too of, you know, our old people and that place. That company, to me, set up that, you know, for the industry. I felt like, you know, working in the music industry with, you know, it's a small kind of, you know, the Aboriginal scene is a small scene, but it's very, yeah, it goes back to them connections and our cultural practices and the way that we kind of do things, you know, and it's a really special space.
I think something that also that I read while finding out about your life is also not only having that connection to elders and the story about place, but also re-engaging with language and being put in a space where approaching language and bringing that into your songwriting starts to happen. Can you tell me a bit about that experience?
Yeah, the first time I started hearing language in, you know, in songs, probably some of the early Titters ones. I remember being asked to do backing vocals for Frankie Emma one year with Wicked Beat Sound System for Perth Festival. And Damien Robinson from Wicked Beat said, Ems, can you do some BVs for Frank? You know, and he sings in Gumbaynggirr language. And, you know, his first thing was, that's not my language. Second thing was, you know, white fella, you know, telling me, you know, making this connection for me.
Yeah.
All of these things. And all I wanted to do was meet Uncle Frank. And I knew that once we met, you know, he'd help me out with his language and I'd talk more about the translations and what it meant and we'd do it properly, you know.
Yeah.
And I knew that once that happened, yeah, I'd feel better about singing backing vocals, you know, for him. And these relationships and these connections over the years through songs and language has been, yeah, big inspiration and eye-opener for me. It, you know, helped me continue to, it helped me, you know, to want to have a go at my own language myself. I didn't grow up speaking a lot of Gumbaynggirr. You know, we have like language centres in our communities now that have empowered a lot of our community. And all that language is coming back to a lot of communities. And it's coming back through a lot of music. And, you know, with always the right approach, I guess, and going by the right, mob and respect. Yeah, I'm happy to always, have language a part of my music. And we featured Annie Ruby's song Yamatji, which is a Ngarrindjeri song on our crossover album last year. Huge honour, to learn a Ngarrindjeri song that's not my language, but to have it included in our music. I think it's empowering, not just for us as black fellas, but for other mob, and to take ownership of all these beautiful languages that are across our country. Like, everybody should be celebrating them, and we can do that through music.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important to me to, continue all of that.
You're saying that, and it made me think about a few years back being at Womadelaide, and Baker Boy was really breaking through, and seeing this crowd of 15 and 16-year-old white Anglo-Australian kids singing in language.
Oh.
It was marvellous.
It's amazing, my kids are, Gumbaynggirr, Dungari kids, with, Yuan and Wiradjuri backgrounds, but they sing in Yungamata because, they listen to Baker Boy.
It's so great. Keeping with that, and like you're saying, this connection to language and this connection to place, I want to again kind of reach back into your family lines and take you back to the song Worrell Creek with your great-grandmother along your grandfather's side, and what that story is about. And I feel like it's almost like a very good example of the connection to place and language and music and how that all aligns, and also family lines as well.
I heard that beautiful recording of my great-grandmother, Nana Balangari, who was my grandfather's grandmother. And I heard it through the Language Centre. I heard a few different versions of Worrell Creek. One old uncle, their great-grandfather for Gumbaynggirr mob, Uncle Harry Buchanan, and there was a couple of other recordings, but it all came through Murabai Language Centre. And, there's biggest mob grandchildren connected to that Nana. And, my contribution to that and our community was to do a version of Worrell Creek. And I kind of steered away a little bit from the original, traditional vocal. Also, I wanted to have more of a contemporary sound, blues, soul sound, with the Putbacks. And so I just sang, played that version to the Putbacks, and we re-recorded Worrell Creek. But yeah, it means a lot to me. It tells a story of that translation of when these Gumbaynggirr mob come up to the headland, and they were looking out to the sea, and that river came in at Worrell Creek. And, you pass this creek, on the highway going from Kempsey through to Nambucca Heads, if you're going to drive up to Brisbane, So there's all these, landmarks. And then that's the other reason why I wanted it to be a part of our album, these places and these stories that are, our poem on country. I want people to, connect to that and, share that connection.
Let's talk about some of your collaborations, and I guess the most known through your solo career is the Putbacks. Can you tell me about when you first came across them, and how even the conversation began with them saying, "Hey, Emma, I think we need to do something." Yeah. How did you first meet them?
It's it's just I remember it like yesterday. It's so clear. I know all the places where we were. So I remember always just playing Lullaby, which is my track that was a part of the Murrinduk production of Black Armband.
Yeah, and that was that came out around 2006
or 7, yeah. So we'd tour that gig, and when I first did Murrinduk, I was just doing lots of backing vocals. And then one tour, the director's like, Ems, do you want to slowly make it, And this is what I mean about like that connection and that kinship that's still a part of a big company. It's like them old fellas, them mob, it's earning your stripes, earning your...
Well, they do recognise you, because I know Uncle Archie said that your voice roots you to the spot, and I think that's a very... It's a very apt quote. I feel like that's the experience of listening to your vocals. But to have that acknowledgement, that must have been amazing.
Yeah. And just to be asked, to sing, I was like, what song? They're like, should you, do you want to do Lullaby? Which is a song I wrote, the Gumbaynggirr parties, Ginga and Gumbaynggirr, which meant peace in your sleep, like sweet dreams.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And I remember a couple of times we played it on tour, and it was becoming a part of the show, because some of the songs in the lineup would change. And then we did Lullaby, and I'd always, the drummer and the bass player, who he's Rory McDougall and Michael Marr from the Putbacks. They'd look over to me and they'd be like, we love this, Ems.
Yeah.
We love it. And I would be, feel real deadly. And then they'd be, I don't know, we probably toured for a bit. And then I remember it so clear now. Rory asked me in Nipmaluk, we're up near Catherine, and we're out on this little bus tour, and he's turned to me in the bus and he's like, Ems, next time you're in Melbourne, come and sing with us, like come and have a play. I'm like, who's us, You and Mick now, they've got a band called the Putbacks. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was like slowly planting a little seed. And then every time I'd come here for like gigs, Melbourne, and rehearsals, I'd ask, it's like every muso could, relate to this. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
When are you mob playing again? come and have a listen. And then that was it, yeah. And then the songs just fell into place. Like, I'm in the middle of putting out a solo album now. And it's like, how do I do this? Because I'm so attached to the band.
Yeah.
We're just like, we're like hand and glove.
Yeah.
Just things happen so naturally. Ideas, everything. It's, yeah, they're like them 5 uncles I had.
And that, I guess that first iteration resulted in Dawn, one of the most profound soul albums, I think, to come out of. I remember seeing your face on T-shirts, seeing your album in your vinyl. It was like the soul was coming back into the Melbourne music scene in a very big way at the time. And I remember being at different people's houses and seeing your album Dawn, the pink, that magenta, your profile sitting on mantelpieces or next to turntables. We're listening to you nonstop. Were you surprised at the reception that received?
Yes. I don't think we knew what we just like, we're just so excited to play. And geez, I remember Dawn, it just wrote itself. Like I heard the track, from the Putbacks, and some of the songs the songs we did on Dawn, like I said, they just kind of wrote themselves. We're just so excited to collaborate and be a part of each other. Still are, know. And I don't think we knew, that, what to expect. I was coming to town and I ended up just basing myself here in Melbourne. Dan Sultan was here. He's always like, Ems, you got a move here. You're like, what are you doing? You know,
Melbourne's calling you.
Just come here. And I came down, and the first, it was like that. I met that whole soul scene, like I didn't know Kylie Alders. I didn't know Moju, Sissy, and I came to Melbourne, and these mob were like, doing a lot of the soul, and I'd be going out and watching these beautiful, women play, and same time I was, writing stuff with the Putbacks. So, another really beautiful cradling community, and like beautiful sister like Kylie Alders, with all the younger soul singers, coming through now, like Thando and myself, you know, always got that arm. Like Auntie Rube, I always say it, you know, in Black Armband. It's that beautiful time of them old mob just, you know, slowly, gently going, hey, we love you, mob. You're right here, you know.
Can I ask you, going back with Dawn, what was the moment when you realised, oh, yeah, this is much bigger than we... Was it on stage? Was it...
I guess it was more like being accepted, you know, to do gigs in the community. I guess, you know, we didn't have a manager. We didn't have a plan. We just wanted to write music. We didn't have anyone looking after us. We just, we put the music out there. We met up with all the mob over at Hope Street and we pressed vinyl. That was my first introduction to you know, understand more about that scene and how mob were, you know, repressing vinyl as well. That was all coming back.
Yeah.
And, you know, last time I seen vinyl, I would have been 8 in my uncle's garage throwing it around. I didn't know, you know, how precious and how amazing that people have these gorgeous collections. And that was a big eye-opener for me, you know. Yeah, and you have to go to all the Putbacks houses and see all their amazing vinyl. I was like, wow, look at this.
Yeah.
You know, and be a part of a label like Hope Street at the time that was pressing it and putting it out in the community. Yeah, it is a real community. And, you know, a lot of the stations and people that supported us, I think that was a big eye-opener then to see, oh, there's a lot of people that, you know, love what we do.
Yeah.
It felt really special. So we thought, you know, we've got to get ourselves together if we're going to, you know, continue this. Yeah.
How does the soul scene compare to the country music scene? Are there things that are similar? Are there things that are different?
Oh, I think more for me, I was coming from the Koori, like the blackfella music scene. And I think that's where it kind of, you know, coming from like, I think that was the thing that kind of crossed over with me. And they're both like, you know, rootsy communities. There's a lot of support and people behind that make it happen. Community radio, festivals, people that just love music make all of that happen and make all of them relationships, you know, gooey and nice.
And then to follow that, you go back into the studio, or you go back with the Putbacks for another album, working with Bender as well from Hiatus Coyote. What was it like going, okay, let's round 2, let's see where this takes us?
That was a lot more of an emotional... There was a lot of time in between Dawn and crossover. I'd lost my mum and I'd become a mum the same year.
Yeah.
The Putbacks were putting it out there that we were going to do another album, but they were giving me that time to, you know, I was still in my grieving like bubble, you know, and they were like, Emma, when you're ready, sissy, you know, come and press record again, you know, or do you want to write some songs again? And it was another thing that slowly just happened, you know, and with me and my personal journey with my mum, just figuring some stuff out, you know, and so all of that happened, and I guess I was up in Sydney and I just given birth to my second daughter, and I was trying to just figure some stuff out, and I went, no, gotta get back to Melbourne. We'll see how we go with some of these songs that I'd been, you know, lyrics that I'd been, you know, playing with. But yeah, again, I guess it was a lot different. It was more of a healing time for me to write music again with the Putbacks, and just really thankful for it. And we pressed record, and we, you know, them relationships all just slowly were, you know, they were growing too, because I'd spent more time with not just Rory and Mick. Crossover is a beautiful example of just, you know, a bigger relationship with the Putbacks. Tommy Martin, who plays guitar, but the amazing, like, you know, Simon Maven, you know, from Hiatus. And that's where he brought in Bender. And he's, you know, made his own beautiful space with all of his friends and connections at the Grove, you know, in Coburg. Yeah, it was just beautiful mob. Just, yeah.
There's a lyric that I love of yours around your the birth of your children, and I guess this is like the next journey of Emma Donovan and your story. But I love the line, "Newest born, I dreamt of you and this day to come." How has raising daughters been a part of your music writing, and has it changed the way that you write music or the stories that you want to tell?
It does. Having children does change the way to write music, because this is what I have to leave for them. I remember back, in the early days of Black Armband, hearing Uncle Joey talk about his song Yellow, and that journey, was for his kids. I remember that really clear, and it does make a lot more sense to me now. And that line that I dreamt of you and your day to come. That's them old aunties, before I had my daughters, even when they were born, them old ladies, they can come and see your kids, they can come and visit. And I remember them lines, and I think of all them stories and them ways that I connect with my kids. And, I can pass that down through my music. That's why it's different now.
Do you feel that with crossover as well, there's this very strong story of motherhood? It's this amazing literal crossover.
Oh, yeah.
Of gaining knowledge and understanding that is the knowledge that you will then pass it down.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you see that, because that was the point. That was the point of crossover for Mum. Yeah. I always talk about it like I lost her, but I became this mum, and I was left to become a mum without my mum. It was the hardest thing to do as a woman, as a mother. I'm so glad that I can share that through my music. And my daughters, when they get older, they'll hear these music. It was a lot of the songs, like with Pink Skirt. A lot of things I wanted to ask Mum, I guess, are there, in the songs. Very personal for me, but it was that time to let it out.
Yeah. And Pink Skirt is in reference to your nana's bright pink skirt.
Yeah. It's like, at that age, I think I remember being a bit shame of Mum, like Nan, and how she looked like she wear them, white, black thongs with the bright pink skirt, she'd and she'd come to the city, like we'd meet her at Central, and when I think about it then, I was so ashamed. But now, that was the name on the demo too, Pink Skirt. I wanted to call it something other than Pink Skirt. The Putbacks scene that I think they would have called it Pink Skirt. And then when we were going through the names properly, the Putbacks like, why are you changing it? Like, Pink Skirt is cool. I'm like, really? I don't know. And,
Continuing on with this idea of, like, being a mother and also putting those things for the future generations, I want to talk about one extremely famous performance of yours on Play School. And how that's such an iconic show, but I know even as a Black kid growing up in Australia, being able to see a Black person on something like that, the depth of that, and surely your daughters just thought you were the coolest for being a part of
we
that.
watch ABC Kids and it kept coming up, like learning together. And, my kids were yelling out, Mom, it's on TV. Very cool for my kids to be able to, see me on Play School. And I was just, I couldn't believe that set. Like, growing up watching Play School.
Yeah.
Never, ever dreamt that, I'd be a part of it. Very grateful for that. I remember when we were doing the rehearsals, I had to go out and can I just look at the set before I get out there? Because I've got to take that in,
Yeah. I would have tried to steal Big Ted if that was up to me.
And you should have seen, like, because, like, all of the, all the toys are on the set and people are leaving, shouldn't be saying this, but, I was so I was like, oh, this is royalty here. Like, I can't just, that's on a cushion over there. Let me just put that back up over there. A good spot.
I guess we were talking about that legacy and working with, like continuing to work with new generations of people, and your experience with Felix Rebel and Ollie McGill, who from Cat Empire, but with their project Spinifex, Gum, and that experience of Make It Rain. I feel like listening to that is when I think about that, the line from Archie that says, when you sing, it roots you to the spot. I remember listening to Make It Rain for the first time and thinking, this is such a powerful, you've been told kind of experience. But what was it like for you to work on that?
There's so many connections to that one song, and all these beautiful connections that Felix, you know, his story and his drive, you know, and his music, him and Ollie, you know, and what they done with that community. I feel like, I always say it, I feel like this tiny little part of, you know, this amazing project. Spinifex Gum, I remember the first time Felix asked me to be a part of it, it was more like, you know, working with the young voices, you know. They were part of the selected voices of the Gondwana choir that made up the Malia choir. So I was just excited, like all these young women, you know. But yeah, the bigger picture was this relationship that Felix and Ollie had with Michael Woodley, who's a beautiful, strong, you know, Yindjibarndi man from Karatha. Later on in that project, I find out through my dad, that I've got a great-great-grandfather who was Yindjibarndi from that community. Wow. So I know that, you know, me being a part of it was a learning thing for me too, and to learn about that community. Make It Rain is, you know, and the project itself, it's always something that I want to invest and, you know, lend my voice towards. I would never think about singing a Tom Waits version of Make It Rain.
Yeah.
That was Felix, you know. That was his thing to go, Ems, we need, you know, come and be a part of this. And yeah, every time we sing it, it feels different. And the more I get into, you know, lean into that show, the more powerful it gets, you know. And also that community, you know, they've gone up against like this big mining company in their community. There's projects like that and the Black Armband I always want to be a part of, a bigger collection, a bigger story, you know. I absolutely love it. And, you know, to be surrounded by all them beautiful voices and, every time we do gigs and tours, we've recently played with the MSO and I seen, you know, them women out there just going. There was one little girl in the choir. She's like 12. It was her first show, you know, at Hamer Hall. And I couldn't keep my eyes off her. I was like, imagine if that was my first gig. You know. Being a part of that collective has been really big eye-opener for me. Just love it. Love being a part of it.
I can't imagine what it'd be like that your first gig is with the MSO at Hamer Hall. That's gig number one. It sets a pretty high bar.
It's a high bar. It's like, you know, a long way from me singing at the reception, you know, Stand By Your Man, you know, my first gig. But it shows a lot of, you know, I guess, you know, how far, you know, hate yarn and talking up myself about, you know, but I'm taking more ownership of it.
Yeah.
Especially in these spaces where there are young women, because I'm not that young little girl anymore. I'm that older woman, and there are young fellas that look up to me now. And it takes a long time to own it, you know, but proudly, I am. It's a big honour.
What are some of the questions or narratives around the younger generation coming to you with, like, questions about the music industry or even how to find who they are within music? Do you find that you're approached more when you do work with all these, like, amazing, like, young women coming through?
I guess, you know, there's it just makes me think of, you know, all of them relationships that I had growing up, like in, you know, a collective like the Black Armband, when there was people like Auntie Ruby Hunter there and Auntie Lou Bennett, you know. It's a special time, you know, and I think vocally, you know, and the representation of young artists that are out today is amazing. I cannot keep up, you know, with, you know, as blackfellas, we think we know everyone that's out there, and it's like these days I don't, like, because there's just like massive representation, you know, like when I was growing up, like there was only Ruby I would see, you know, on Rage, video hits, and it was an image thing for me. I'd see her, and wasn't until like years later I'd see someone like Kristen Anu, and then years after that I'd see someone like Shakaya, or, you know, Jessica Malboy. There's so many now.
But I know that you have also put on a completely different hat outside of music, and that understanding of cultural knowledge and cultural weight, and being and carrying that through. And sorry to stay in this space, but you also were the executive producer on Wash My Soul in the Rivers Flow, and I wanted to ask you about that project and if you could talk about that, because I think it's really beautiful.
No, thanks. Yeah, it's a massive role. And to be honest, when I was first asked, I was like, why would anybody ask me to be an executive producer? I actually said no. Like, I was just like, yeah. But, you know, after we talked to the director and, of course, you know, another, you know, a way of, you know, voicing my opinion and taking ownership of that role was that, you know, Uncle Archie and Auntie, you know, Ruby's family trusted me with, you know, my opinion, you know, and my opinion, and that was huge, and that was a big thing for me. Still really hard for me to kind of go, wow, you know, I was a part of that, because their story is so precious and so beautiful, and I'm not family either, you know, I'm a musical family. So it was a massive honour and a big role for me, but yeah, it was part of that. Stunning film. The other thing that was really moving for me and I guess beautiful to be in that role was the actual story itself, you know, and it was similar to that Black Armband story. So, you know, in, you know, the art orchestra, there was Paul Grabowsky. And it's funny, like, I'm working with Paul Grabowsky today, you know. We've just started putting some music out together. So there's all them connections again that are, you know, over-connecting, and it makes me think, you know, I'm on the right track, you know, working with the right mob. But, yeah, no, loved my time in working on a film. Just never imagined it, though.
Does it also feel important as an Aboriginal person to ensure that Aboriginals' stories are told correctly and to be able to have that input to make sure that it... Yeah.
And that's what I'm learning more as I get older. I was always hesitant about them, you know, decisions, or not confident about them and shy about them decisions, and, you know, certain things I would do to be representative of my music growing up, but now I take ownership of them, and that's of me just getting older and learning in the industry, and feeling, just comfortable and owning it. That we can have a voice, we can have an opinion. There are more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander directors, producers now too, not just artists, you know. And even the way that we program festivals and do things, it's changed a lot from when I first started. I'm really proud of that.
It's almost as if the way that your grandfather and that your mother curated stuff for community and for country is becoming the norm practice.
Yes. I've never thought of it like that, you know, but it is. And, you know, like when we play at festivals like WOMAD, you know, the way that, you know, these festivals are programmed and that, you know, our mob are programmed into them festivals, it's just, you know, it's like, it's unreal. It's, you know, to see someone like Yiramal, you know, be a part of the come from his community and be a part of that representation is huge for me. And, to be building alongside these artists now, very proud. It means a lot.
Have you, out of curiosity, have you been back to Tamworth as or is there a country album in the future?
Yeah. There's definitely some country music that we're ready to put out next year. I've collaborated so much now with the Putbacks. It's like, I want to... Who is Emma Donovan now with her solo stuff? I'm, picking it all apart. We've sung some songs also and dug up some of my grandfather's music from the 1972 when he was writing a lot. There was a project called Mission Songs Project put together by Jessie Lloyd. And she encouraged me to... she was looking for some songs from Mission Days, and she come across my grandfather's music in the library down in Canberra.
Wow.
She found like this whole reel, my grandfather's songs, and some of them we knew, but some of them we were like, hey, you even know that song? And I showed it to the family. But yeah, we'll be releasing my grandfather's music soon. And, when I look at myself more as a solo, like a singer, songwriter, these are the genres and stories that I'm leaning towards, and it's definitely going country.
Yeah.
Country with a bit of soul. I always said soul had a lot of country, but it all, it all crosses over.
With that, did you know that your grandfather had recorded his music and it was held somewhere? Or was that...
Actually, we didn't ever have recordings of, like, my grandparents. They didn't ever go into studio, and record. We only had cassettes of them where, they'd the old cassette. I'm doing the two fingers.
Yeah,
like
I know exactly.
the red button and the, the record and the play on the old cassette players. So we only had tapes of them, So what Jessie Lloyd had found out was there was these different collectors from the library who would deposit, all these, singers and songwriters from different community. And the beautiful thing about Jessie is she's become one of the first black collectors, that have gone to communities now and finding and putting the puzzles together with all these old songs, beautiful songs and stories. But yeah, Chris Sullivan owned a recording that he had made of my grandparents. And it's an interview almost, like Pop's talking about how he wrote these old songs. And these are songs that I've learned, since I was pretty young.
Yeah. Almost again, you've been brought into the story behind the words.
Yeah.
It's a reoccurring thing of not just learning the songs, but learning the weight that lies behind them, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And, it's my whole family that are going to be part of that, not just me, the cousins and my kids. Yeah.
Yeah. What have been your career highlights, if you were to name your top three?
Oh.
If there's,
That's hard.
I know there's more. Or what are some of the moments that you reflect on as being some of the biggest highlights for you?
I guess, meeting people like the Putbacks is always... I still freak out at a gig. Like, we did this beautiful gig at a church in Dalesford the other day with the Putbacks, and I think I even lost my words or couldn't remember some lyrics because I was just going, am I doing this with these beautiful people? Always, recordings, and being in the studios, I look at them like albums, photo albums, and that snapshot in that time of my life. Yeah, I guess, being on stage with people like Uncle Archie and being on tours with people like Auntie Roo, they've been massive highlights. And just times that I will never forget.
Yeah. If you could go back to that 6-year-old getting ready for her first pageant, what's some of the knowledge that you have now that you could tell her?
I guess, just to enjoy, It's funny, Mum was like one of them dance mums, She'd be like, move in the chorus, go to the left, walk that way and go that way. Make sure you smile. She'd be up at the front telling me to smile and, I don't know. I don't think I'll be that, much of a dance mum. Like if I was trying to encourage someone like my daughter, we did a gig in Fed Square the other day and it was NAIDOC week and wanted to share this beautiful song with my daughter in this moment. And I was like my mum again, but not in that way. Like in that, out the front there telling her to smile. But I guess, well, my encouragement would be, to enjoy the songs. Enjoy the songs and, just to be open and mindful to sing, and not just stick to one genre or one band, play in as many bands as you want, sing with as many groups. I remember when I first came to Melbourne, I remember, trying to write a lot with the Putbacks and put something out with them, but I was doing BVs with Uncle Bart Willoughby. He was inviting me always to do his gig, with Delene Briscoe. And I think that was the one thing that I thought, no, I'm not going to limit, just going to, try and do as much as I can.
Awesome. And we have the pleasure of watching you do all of this, doing what you do best and inspiring us all. Emma Donovan, thank you so much for being a part of Music Vault. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute honour to sit here and share my story. I feel very honoured. Thank you.